Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Antonovich. I work for the Sacramento County Office of Education. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's session, Introduction to the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS, for teachers. This training session, which is brought to you by the California Department of Education, is designed for CERS users who have access to CERS data. For example, teachers who have students rostered to them in the system and other LEA staff who are interested in using CERS. And this may include staff who access CERS, but who do not have that administrator role where they're not responsible for managing users or rostering students. Now, while all are welcome to join us, we do want to note that a different CERS training session designed for coordinators and administrators was offered in July, and additional sessions will be offered in October. We will get to that in a few slides. But if you are a teacher who is unsure as to whether you have access to data in CERS, fear not. Our training today will use a training tool that mimics the live CERS environment, so no one will be left behind and everyone will leave with a basic CERS understanding. Let's start by reviewing our agenda. Today, we're going to cover an overview of CERS, including navigational basics. We're going to go over how to access summative assessment results and what summative assessment features are available for teachers in CERS. We'll take a look at the results features in CERS that are specific to the interim assessments. And please note, we will cover some basic information about the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. However, those have not yet launched. So most of our focus will be on what is available in CERS for the ELA and math interim assessments from Smarter Balanced. A few examples of these Smarter Balanced interim assessment features in CERS are being able to see the standards for each item, viewing an item or an answer by the key distractor analysis, or viewing the actual items and student responses. And finally, we will go over some CERS resources for teachers, including the links in CERS that go directly to lesson plans in the Tools for Teachers system. During our time together, we'll have a break in the middle of it all, as well as guided exploration where you are able to explore on your own. And you are going to spend the rest of this session with your excellent trainers who have a lot of experience in CERS. Today, we have with us Teresa Blanchard from the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, Aaron Gordon from the San Diego County Office of Education, and Joe Valero, also from the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. In terms of materials, this resource guide contains links to all of the resources, space for you to take notes, and all of the steps you will need to explore the system. We also want to mention that in your resource guide, you have a link to the copy of the PowerPoint slides right there at the top of the resource guide. So let's cover our learning goals for our time together today. Participants will understand the purpose and use of CERS, how to access data in CERS, which data and features are available for test administrators and test examiners, and how to access resources to support classroom teaching and learning. And we'll know we've met our learning goals when we can accomplish our success criteria. So by the end of our time together, participants will be able to explain the purpose of CERS, describe the types of assessment data and CERS features available to test administrators and test examiners, or TAs and TEs, and access instructional resources to support classroom teaching and learning. And with that, I'm going to pass you on to your wonderful trainers.
All right. Well, thank you, Nikki. So as Nikki mentioned, I'm Aaron Gordon from the San Diego County Office of Education. I am so excited about our time together. And so, hey, let's get started with our CERS overview. All right. So what is CERS? Well, we refer to CERS as our one-stop shop for state assessment results. CERS allows teachers and administrators to access detailed student performance information for the summative CAASPP, the summative ELPAC, as well as our interim assessments. So CERS offers LEA staff that earliest access to the latest assessment data, as well as the historical assessment data. And we all know as educators that when we have current and prior year student test results, and you combine that with other student information, such as classroom assignments and teacher observations, it really can guide instruction and improve student learning. Oh, we also want to point out that CERS was created with educator input, and that included many educators right here from California. And that input from the field was instrumental in developing CERS to ensure that educators have the information that they need about their students' progress. So CERS is the primary source for the current and previous CAASPP and ELPAC assessment individual and aggregate results. Results are available in CERS for the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments for ELA and Mathematics, the California Alternate Assessments or CAAs for ELA, Mathematics, and Science, the California Science Test or CAST, the California Spanish Assessment or CSA, the Summative ELPAC, and the Summative Alternate ELPAC, and then also the Smarter Balanced Interim Assessments for ELA and Mathematics. And we are very excited about the new ELPAC interim assessments that will be coming to us this fall, and the CAST interim assessments also coming this fall. And for the ELA and Math interim assessments, educators can view item level information, such as individual student responses and even the correct answer to each test item. The ELA and Math interim assessment results in CERS also include the claim, the target, and the standard alignment for items. And we're going to take a deeper dive into the ELA and Math interim results a little later in the training today. You're going to discover how powerful those reports and then the resources available in CERS can be. Now, the item level information that I've described, it's only displayed for the ELA and Math interim assessment results. So you won't see that. It's not available for the summative assessments. And then, as I mentioned before, the CDE is launching the interim assessments for CAST and ELPAC this fall. And later in today's training, we're going to provide more information about the data that will be available in CERS for those assessments. So, who has access to CERS? Well, all California LEA educators have access to CERS after they have been assigned a TOMS account. TOMS stands for the Test Operations Management System. So your user role in TOMS will determine which data and the features you may access in CERS. So teachers have access to reports for students assigned to them in CERS by either the LEA coordinator or the site coordinator. So the process of assigning students to teachers is called rostering. And if a teacher accesses CERS without having students rostered to them, they're not going to see any data. So it's a very important process. Now, when a teacher accesses CERS and has students rostered to them, they're going to see groups of students in the assigned groups section of CERS. And we have an example here on the screen with groups for sample middle school grades 6, 7, and 8. Now, in addition, teachers can create customized groups based on their assigned groups. And we're going to take a closer look into customized groups in a few moments. But for this training, I want to reiterate, it's fine if you don't have any student groups assigned to you, because we're going to use the CERS Sandbox training tool. So no need to worry about that. All right, so let's get started with accessing CERS. So you can access CERS through either the CAASPP.org or the ELPAC.org websites. And this example is showing the CAASPP.org website. There's a California Educator Reporting System button at the top of the homepage. And when you select this button, it takes you to the CERS resources webpage, where you can access either CERS, the live environment, or the CERS Sandbox training tool. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using that training tool today. Now, from the ELPAC website, there's the CERS button on the left of the homepage. And when you select that button, again, it takes you to the CERS resources webpage, where you can either access the live CERS environment or the CERS Sandbox training tool. So from the home page, you can access assessment results two ways: by individual student or by student group. Now, when you search for a student, you must enter the student's statewide student identifier, or SSID, and you put that into the box. Now, if the student test history report doesn't display, it could be that the SSID is incorrect, or you typed it in incorrectly. Or it could mean that the user doesn't have permission to view that student's information. And then finally, it could mean that there's no test results available for that student. So then we have search by student group, and you would select the group of students from the Assign Groups tab. Your district or site administrator will assign groups to you based on your classroom roster or other information. For example, if you're an elementary teacher, you might only have one group of students based on your classroom. But if you're at a secondary level, you might be assigned multiple groups, one for each class period that you teach. Teachers should contact their site administrator if there are no assigned groups when you log into CERS. Okay, customize groups. Yes, so teachers have the ability to create these custom groups within the assigned groups. So customized groups allow teachers to view assessment results for a select group of students, tailored for their specific classroom needs. For example, looking at EL student needs for support or tracking an intervention group's progress. This feature can be super powerful for teachers as they monitor progress for a set of selected students within their class. And so to create a customized group, it's so easy. You go to the My Groups tab and you select the Create button. You can select students to be in the group by simply clicking on their name from the list of assigned students. And you can also use the search box by typing in the student's name or SSID. And you also have access to what we call advanced filters to narrow down the group options even more. And those advanced filter options for creating custom groups are available for sorting by migrant status, English language acquisition status, primary language, race, ethnicity. And so it's a really powerful tool to help narrow that search. So creating and editing groups is very easy to do, and it really only takes a couple minutes. Okay, so as you've heard, CERS has a lot of features to offer. And one great way for staff to get familiar with those features is to just take time to explore the system. But what about trainings like this, or trainings that you attend locally where you want to explore the features of CERS, but you've got to keep that student data confidential, right? Well, we have this great training tool called the CERS Sandbox that allows staff to get familiar with the features of CERS in a non-secure environment. And we're going to be using that CERS Sandbox today during our demos and your exploration. And the sandbox it's great. It's great for individual exploration or group training because it has the same functions as CERS. Now, the CERS Sandbox is a public website, so you can feel free to share the URL with anyone interested in seeing what sort of data are in CERS. And the sandbox uses fictitious data, as well as released items that are available publicly from the Smarter Balanced Sample Items website. This way, security is not an issue when you use the sandbox. And before we dive in, we want to share two quick things to know about the sandbox. First, when you first open the sandbox, you're going to be prompted to choose a role. And in the live CERS environment, the user will not select a role. The live CERS environment uses the TOMS user role assigned to you. So you use your TOMS credentials. The second difference is that the purpose of the sandbox is for training on CERS features and not for analyzing data. So you're going to see some wonky things. Some of the assessment rules, like alternate assessments for all, they're not going to apply. For example, in the sandbox, you'll see a student with results from an alternate assessment and a general assessment from the same administration. And we know that that wouldn't happen in the live environment. So just keep that in mind when you're poking around the sandbox. Okay, so we are ready for our first demo. We're really excited. And again, gonna use that sandbox. So I'm gonna go ahead and take us through. Okay, so we are at the CAASPP.org website. And underneath the TOMS button, we have our California Educator Reporting System button. Actually, I'm going to increase the screen, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so we have our CERS button that we're going to go ahead and select that will bring us to the CERS resources webpage. On the right, you'll see the CERS Sandbox training tool, which is what we are using for our demonstration. And as I mentioned, you'll be prompted to select a role, and we will be going in as a sample middle school teacher, and we'll enter the sandbox. Okay, so our homepage, I want to just bring to your attention some great resources that are right up at the top. Our user guide and interpretive guide that you can also access on the right hand side. We have a welcome box, again, the user guide, interpretive guide. These are great. Right within the system, at your fingertips, you can access. And the user guide is going to give you information on the features and functions of the system, as well as how to navigate the system. The interpretive guide is going to help you specifically analyze the smarter balanced assessment results. So both of those are right there up at the top or in the welcome box. Now, as you can see, as a teacher, I have the access assessment results, and I can access results by the student or by group. So we're going to go ahead and I'll show you by student. We need to type in our SSID and select the search button, and it'll bring us to the student test history report. And we've got Thomas here. Thomas Booker is our student that we've typed in his SSID, and this is his student test history report. Now we have a couple decisions to make. We first need to find out what school year do we want to look at for Thomas. You can look at prior test history. You can look at all. I think I'm going to select all so you can see. We also have a decision to make about subject. You can look at one assessment. You can look at several. We're going to go ahead and keep it at all. And then assessment types. You can dive into the interim assessments. If you use those in your district or at your school, you can look at just the interim assessments or the summative, but we're going to again look at all. So I've selected all across the board. Now, if I scroll down, those decisions we made will determine what we see in Thomas's student test history report. And you'll notice that there's these little cards across the top, and each card represents an assessment result for Thomas. And you'll notice that as a teacher, I'm a middle school teacher, but I have results for Thomas going back to 5th and 4th grade. So the beautiful thing about CERS is that if the student is rostered to me, I have access to all of their results, even for results in a year that I didn't have that student in my classroom. So it's a really powerful tool, everything at my fingertips in one place, rather than having to dig through CUME folders or different systems. So it's very, very handy. I'm going to scroll down and we'll take a closer look at one of these cards. Let's look at CAST. So again, CAST was administered to Thomas in 5th grade. And each card will have the name of the assessment, the grade level that it was, that the test was given, the test date that it was administered, and the performance level, the overall performance level. Then you'll notice there's a link, one result, and if you click on that, it'll give you a little bit more information about that assessment result. So as I can see for CAST, we actually have overall information, performance information, and then we also have domain level information. For overall, again, we have the school that the student was administered the test. So you'll see the school. And I do want to point out, it's not just schools within your district. If Thomas took this in a different district and then transferred into my district, and then eventually was in my school, rostered to me, I'll see results for Thomas that he took at different schools in different districts. So again, it's very powerful because those results follow the student. Then I can see the achievement level and the scale score. The domain toggle up at the top here will allow me to see a little bit more information about these test results. I can see how well Thomas did with life sciences, physical sciences, and earth and space sciences. So again, you can drill down to get that more detailed information. I'm going to go back up at the top, and I want to point out two different buttons up at the top. Okay, so we have Export CSV. This is available if you want to export the data into a CSV file, and if you're proficient in Excel and you want that, the student's information in that format, you can export the data at any time with just a simple push of the button. There's also printable reports, and printable reports gives you a PDF of an individual student report, and we call it an ISR, and it's a really nice, colorful, very user-friendly report that gives further explanation about the student's results. I'm not going to demonstrate that here, but I wanted to point these two out. Very easy to do, and two different ways to pull the data out. One in a nice, pretty report, and one in an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to go back to the home page and show you one more feature before I cut you loose and you get to play in the system. I want to show you how to customize groups. Now, I showed you how to search by student, and we're going to spend in the next couple of demos, we're going to spend a lot of time in searching by group, where you're able to click on a group and look at results, aggregate as well as individual results for that group of students. So we're going to spend a lot of time a little bit later in our other demos. But what I want to do is show you from those assigned groups how to customize a group. So you're going to click on the My Groups panel, and you're going to select the plus create button. And this will give you all of the students in your assigned group. So I have my assigned group that I've selected, my grade 6, and I have all the students on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, this is where I'm going to build my group. So let's say I'm working with a group of my 6th graders on mathematical practices, and I have an intervention group, and I want to monitor the progress of this group of students. So what I can do, I'm going to name this group. I'm just going to keep it simple and call it math. And I'll call it 6th grade because maybe I have an intervention group for my 7th graders too. Okay, so I've named my group. Now I just need to select the kiddos that are going to be in that group. And it's as simple as clicking on their name. I'm selecting them from the list of students from my assigned group on the left, and I'm clicking on their names. And you'll notice as I click on the names of the students, they appear over in my custom group that I'm building. And if I make a mistake, no problem. I just simply, oh, Daisy Bates, she's not in my intervention group. So I simply click on her name and it will remove that student from the group. And again, it's as simple as clicking on a name. You can also type in the student's name or SSID and it will pull up the student, and then you would select them. So I save my group. And now I have not only my assigned groups, but I have my groups. Now I can look at the results, aggregate results for that group of students. And I can quickly look at the individual student results for that group of students with ease. I'm going to show you how to create a custom group with one more feature before you have your time to explore. So again, we're in the My Groups panel. I'm going to click on the plus create. And this time I'm going to use the advanced filters and I'm going to create a group from some of my EL students in 6th grade. I'm working with a select group of students that are actually English learners. So I'm going to show up at the top, you'll have this advanced filters option, and we're going to go ahead and show the advanced filters. The advanced filters, you can filter that your 6th grade or whatever assigned group that you've selected using these categories. So you can filter down your migrant status students, by different primary languages, your English language acquisition status, or race ethnicity. So again, we're looking at English learners. So I'm going to select English learners. And now if I scroll down, my list of 6th graders has filtered down to just my English learners. Now, if I wanted to add all those English learners in my custom group, I can just select add all, and it will put, with one click, it'll put all those English learners in my custom group. Now, if I just wanted to select some of those English learners, I would simply click on the students that are in that special group from the English learners that I've filtered down. And now, how easy is that? I don't have to go through my big long list of all my students. I use the advanced filters to help me be more efficient in creating that custom group. I click on save, and now I can monitor student progress for that particular group of 9 students. Okay, I have been talking a very long time, and I know you're anxious to get into the system. So we are going to let you have your turn exploring. So you're going to have 7 minutes to access the CERS sandbox, and we recommend you access as a teacher. And the instructions and the link in the sandbox are in your resource guide. If you have any questions along the way, put those in the Q&A box, and myself or my colleagues will help answer your questions. And you may do one of the following, or all if you want. It depends on how ambitious you are. Search results for an individual student, and we've put those SSIDs in the resource guide. You can search results by group. You can create a printable report, export a CSV file, create a custom group. A couple reminders: certain roles do not have access to certain features. So in order to view assigned groups and customize groups, you've got to go in as a teacher role. Also, this is a sandbox, so the data, it's going to look a little different than the live environment. And most importantly, we want you to have fun. You can't break anything. You're in a sandbox, so click away and have a great time. So we hope that you were able to do a couple of those tasks and maybe had a few new discoveries about CERS. So we're going to go ahead and take an opportunity to answer any questions. You've been putting your great questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to hand it off to Nikki to see if there's some that we want to answer live.
There are, thank you. There's 2 things I want to cover really quick before we dive into some of your questions. The first is a reminder that the system was just rolled over for the new school year, the new fiscal year. So some LEAs wait until class lists are finalized or things are a little bit more stable before making CERS rosters. So if you log into your live CERS environment and you don't see any students rostered to you or any groups assigned, don't be alarmed. Right? Maybe contact your administrator, see when they have rostering planned, but we are 1 day out from the system rollover. We also got a question that I want to make sure I read the answer very carefully. It's about advanced filters for things like special education or homeless foster status. And the answer to that is that personally identifiable information about students can only be shared or redisclosed for specific purposes under FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and in compliance with California and federal regulations. Certain student level data such as special education status, foster and homeless status, free and reduced price meal information is additionally protected from redisclosure under FERPA and other state and federal student privacy laws. And if you think to yourself, well, they're my students, I know if they're on an IEP or not. Accurate, but not everybody in CERS has that level of information for all students. And how that is shared is a local determination at each LEA with security in mind. So CERS is not configured to share that information through a filter. All right, we have a couple of questions about rostering. So I'll start with this one. Alicia, you answered this one. Assigned groups are created by the LEA coordinator or site coordinator, correct? They're not automatically populated.
That is correct. So those roles at the TOMS levels, they can do various tricks as far as the rostering process. It will need to be the educator role or the site task coordinator role to be able to create those groups for you.
And then we had someone ask about the custom groups. Can I create a custom group that contains students from different groups that have been rostered to me?
Yeah, I can get that one up right now. So the short answer, yes. So at first, when we were reading that, we thought it was, somebody rostered to a different class. But if you have multiple rosters, let's say you're a middle school teacher, you have multiple periods, yes, you can go over, create those custom groups, a custom group using multiple, let's say, periods that have been assigned to you.
Someone asked about ELPAC domain level results. And so I'm going to ask you to hold on just a sec. We're going to get to that in the summative section, which is coming up next. All right, let's go ahead and move along.
All right, and you actually provided a great segue into those domains because that's part of summative assessments that are inside of CERS. And so that's really the next section we're going to be talking about, really is that summative assessment results inside of California Educator Reporting System. And so in this part of the presentation, we'll be going over summative results for the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments, Summative ELPAC, California Science Test, California Alternate Assessments, California Spanish Assessments, and the Summative Alternate ELPAC. Yep, all that information can be found inside of CERS. Ton of information. We also want to mention that one of the benefits of CERS is that educators can view some of the student summative results prior to the public release of assessment data, allowing them the ability to analyze student performance in a timely manner following assessments. Think about the old days when we would go over, we'd administer a summative assessment at the end of the year, and we usually had to wait until August or September to really go over and just get that information. Now, it's pretty quick. We can go over, we can administer a summative assessment, and usually by about June, we have access to that information, and that's all within CERS. Once again, it's all about having that access though. For all summative assessments, we will see the grade level that's assessed, average scale score for the group, number of students and the results, student score distribution by overall achievement or performance level, individual student reports or ISRs, and additional detailed information. For ELA and mathematics, additional information includes Lexile and quantile measures, target reports, which is brand new this year. We're super excited about that, as well as writing trait scores. For CAASPP, with the T at the end, additional information includes domain level information, and Erin did a great job of touching on that a little earlier, and we'll get into that here in a few minutes again. And for ELPAC, additional information includes both domain and composite level information. All right, so we're getting ready for our second live demo of this training. So in a couple seconds here, I'm going to minimize the screen. And so what I'm going to do is walk us through accessing summative data, as well as any data that is specific to each summative assessment. After this, you're going to have some time to go in, explore, play around inside of the system. And so I'm actually going to leave the presentation right now, and we're going to go back to that sandbox account in CERS. And so how do we access that sandbox account? Remember, when we are on the CAASPP.org landing page, if we click on the California Educator Reporting System, We have the two buttons, the real CERS, which we're not using today. We're using the sandbox training tool, the sandbox account. So I'm going to click in. And once again, we're going to be looking at summative data. And so the first grade level we're going to actually use in the sandbox account is first grade. You're probably saying to yourself, wait a second, we're talking about the California Educator Reporting System. You know what? First grade, why do we need that? Why would a first grade teacher ever be in there? Well, guess what? Summative assessments are inside of the system, and ELPAC is a K through 12 summative assessment. So in first grade, notice what's popping up immediately is the grade 1 ELPAC summative assessment. Yep, first grade inside of this system. And so what we'll see when we click on, or it's actually clicked on already for us, the ELPAC summative assessment, we're going to get our overview of the performance levels, the distribution, percentage of students that were a level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. We're also going to see the number of students in the results. So we have 47 students for this first grade ELPAC summative, the average scale score. And we're also going to be able to go over, and let's say I didn't want to view it as a percent. Let's say I want to know the raw numbers in each. If I click on number, it'll change. So notice it's no longer a percentage. Now it's an actual number. So once again, I'm going to go back up, move my cursor back. I'm going to have it back as a percentage one more time. As I scroll down the screen, notice it's going to give me my students' results. It's going to give me the school achievement level once again by student, and then scale score. If I click on scale score, it's going to sort it for me. Lowest scale score, click again, highest scale score. I want to draw attention one more time over here to achievement level. So once I sorted by scale score, all of my achievement levels have been sorted. So right now, we have it just as an overall level. If I scroll up, and I move my cursor over to the right, the default was viewing it as an overall score. If I click on composite, now it's switched to the distribution of scores for oral language and written language, the two composites for ELPAC. As I scroll down and look at it by student, notice it has gone over and actually given me the scale score and achievement and level, for the two composites by student as well. If I scroll up to the top one more time, so by the default, it was overall. We switched it to composite. Now, if I click on domain, now we have the percentage of students, each domain, listening, speaking, reading, writing, and once again, once I had clicked on domain, it applied it to the individual students as well. Let's say I wanted to go over and print this out as a spreadsheet. If I move my cursor up above where I had just clicked on domain, you'll see export to CSV. If I click export to CSV, it's going to kick it out to me in a spreadsheet where I will be able to download it. That's ELPAC. That's first grade. There are other assessments in the system that are really great to go over and get some detailed information. So what I'm actually going to do right now is I'm going to leave first grade and let's look at Smarter Balanced Summative. So when I click on our sandbox account one more time, we were looking at elementary school last time. Let's go into middle school. And so when I choose teacher sample middle school, it's going to take its sweet, precious time, of course. There we go. So now it popped up on our screen. And so let's go in as an 8th grade teacher. So by default, once again, if I didn't have grade 8 ELA pop up, let's say I needed to go over and look for a different assessment, this plus sign back here is what allows me to go over and see all of the available tests to go over and view inside of CERS. But by default in 8th grade, this grade 8 ELA summative popped up for me automatically. Just like ELPAC, we are going to see achievement levels, percentages distributed. So percentage that did not meet standard, percentages that nearly met standard, and exceeded standard. Just like ELPAC, I could change it to a number rather than percent if I really wanted to. I'm going to keep it as a percent right now. If I scroll down, We have the individual student scores one more time. We also have achievement levels and then scale scores as well. Let's say that I wanted to get more granular with the information that I'm looking at though. We're looking at overall scores. Well, we also have access to this year, which is super exciting, our target report. So notice I had just clicked on, instead of seeing results by student, the dropdown opens up. I can actually click on target reports. And these target reports, great opportunity to go over, pull up the blueprints ahead of time inside of Content Explorer if you haven't had a chance to be in Content Explorer. Wonderful site, built with great resources, including blueprints. But going over and just looking at how are our students performing within, so we have the reading claim, and then here's the individual target. So let's look at target 1 as an example. Target 1 in reading, key details. Given an inference or conclusion, use explicit details and implicit information from the text to support the inference or conclusion provided. So you'll see what group we're looking at, number of students tested, performance relative to the entire test. And if I don't know what that means, CERS does a wonderful job of going over with these little eye icons. That sounded kind of funny. Eye icons. Click on it. It's going to pop up. It's going to give me information. So performance relative to the entire test and also performance relative to Met Standard or level 3. Once again, these are called target reports. They weren't available last year. We're using an adjusted form. This year, they are back for us, and we're super excited to go over and be able to dig into these reports right here. Notice we're still going down. Now we're getting to the writing claim with the targets that live within writing, listening, research, and inquiry. So once again, they're available for the 22-23 Smarter Balance Summative Assessment for groups of 30 or more students. And that'll be the key right there, 30 or more students. So those were target reports, all within grade 8 ELA summative, but there are also some other wonderful reports. If I go over and click on Lexiles, it's going to give it to me individually one more time for the students. It's going to give me the actual Lexile measure for each individual student I can sort. Who had the lowest Lexile measure, who has the highest Lexile measure. In other words, what is their reading level? And then what is their Lexile range? So for Daniel Burkett, he has a Lexile measure of 826, and his Lexile range is anywhere from 726 to 876. Great information to go over, use in our libraries to go over and choose just right books. Let's say that I want to go a little deeper and I want to start looking at writing scores. So instead of Lexile report, now I'm going to click on written extended response, or excuse me, writing trait scores. And so this is really from the written extended response on Smarter Balance Summative. So notice the screen just changed for me. Once again, this is a sandbox account. You're not going to have all 5 genres. Usually you'll have three different genres if you're 3rd through 5th, or 6th through 8th, and then in high school you only have 2. But we can actually see how our classes perform in the different categories in writing. So for example, this one right here, argumentative, evidence and elaboration, they averaged a 1.8 out of 4. Organization and purpose, once again, 1.8 out of 4, and then conventions, they averaged a 1 out of 2. We'll also be able to see the percentage of students that were scoring a 0, or maybe percentage of students that were a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. The zeros are really important because every time a student earns a score of a 0, there will be some sort of condition code that's going to be connected to it. Maybe it was off purpose. Maybe it was off topic. What if it was a wonderful piece of writing that they wrote, but it was off purpose? Could have been blank, could have been insufficient. So there are condition codes that are associated with each. When we see larger percentages in the zeros, we want to go over and do a little more digging as to what kind of condition codes were connected to it. Could be a little more systemic as opposed to individual students. So I could view this right now as argumentative. I could change it to explanatory or informational. Notice that these numbers are going to change as we go along. And before anybody says anything, sometimes they don't add up to 100%. I've had it a couple of times where you say, hey, Joe, that doesn't have to 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. It's a sandbox account used to go over and just practice and click around in there. So if you see it, please note that it is a sandbox account. So this was all available for Smarter Balanced English Language Arts. You'll also have target reports available for math once again for 30 or more students. And you'll also have quantile measures along with overall scale scores available for math. Let's change tests though. This is English Language Arts right here. Oh, you know what? One more thing before I change tests, excuse me. Let's go back to overall results by students. And Aaron talked about ISRs a little earlier. So if we want to see condition codes in the ISRs, we can actually go over and view those condition codes in the ISRs. And so I'm actually going to use Mr. John Jacobs, and I was going to start singing it just to see if anybody was going to sing along. I was going to say we can make a really cool club if you were singing along with me, John Jacob. But anyways, if I click on John Jacob, it gives me the option. I can view his test history, or I can print John's summative report. So as soon as I click on print his summative report, and I'm still on ELA, I can click on create report. Now, I've already done it and I'll click it just to get it set in my reports. When it's ready and it's marinated and it's done, it's going to pop up as an individual PDF for the student. So you're going to see the actual scale score ranges, different achievement levels for, this is 8th grade, I believe. So I'm on 8th grade right now. So you'll see what the minimum scale score is to be a 1 all the way to a 2. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit more. And so the really great thing about these reports, though, is that if I scroll down, and so once again, there's no claim level information because we do have an adjusted form that we're using. But if we move down right here, we can actually see for this individual student, John Jacob, the writing purpose that he was assigned, argumentative, and then how he scored in evidence and elaboration, organization and purpose, and conventions. Now, we know that every time a student scores a 0, there is a condition code that's going to be connected to it. So for this, and once again, these are all fake students, this particular student, it was just blank. Nothing was typed into the system. You're going to see others where it's going to be insufficient, off topic. Once again, you'll end up seeing different condition codes pop up, and we'll be able to see these in the ISRs. I'm going to go back to our 8th grade. Let's see if it's going to let me do it. Oh, it did. Nice. Okay, so grade 8 ELA summative, we were looking at that test. Let's look at the science test, or I was going to say CAST. That's why you heard me hold that T there. So I'm going to switch tests. So I clicked on the little plus sign. Here's grade 8 CAST. And now I have the 2 tests. I can't handle too much information. So I'm actually going to unclick ELA summative. Notice it's no longer green. And now we have the science test. Same thing as ELA and ELPAC. We have the percentage distributed. We could go over, look at it by individual numbers if we'd like. And then we can also go over, see the individual student scores. If I don't want to view this through overall and I want to view it through the domains, I'll click on domain. And here we go. Life sciences, physical sciences, and then earth and space sciences. Distribution across all of them. And then individual student performance within the different domains. And if I want to kick it out and do an Excel spreadsheet, you'll just go over, click on export to CSV. Lots of really great resources within this system. So I was having a lot of fun right there, and I'm sure all of you are having fun with me in your heads, right? But now it's your turn. Your turn to go over, get into that sandbox, and you'll be using, once again, it's that CERS sandbox account we'll be using. We recommend that you access the sandbox as a teacher. The instructions and a link to the sandbox are in your resource guide. You may do one or all of the following tasks depending on how ambitious you feel. For the summative ELPAC, find the composite and domain results. For the CAASPP, find the achievement levels by domain. For Smarter Balanced ELA, find the writing trait scores or the target reports. Couple of reminders. Remember that certain roles will not have access to certain features. This is a sandbox, which means the data will look different when you log in to your actual CERS environment. Most importantly, once again, since we're using this sandbox, have fun, click away, try to break it. Can't break anything. So we want to now take a few minutes just to do some personal reflection. We have two specific questions we want you to reflect on. The first one is, how might I use the summative assessment data from CERS to inform my next steps? And the next is, how will I use the writing data in CERS to inform my instructional decisions? We're actually going to come up to our next Q&A. And so with that, I'm actually going to toss it over to Nikki.
Yeah, so the first question we have is, how can we see questions ahead of the test? And two answers were offered from CD and Smarter Balance in the chat. One is the interim assessment item portal, which can be accessed through Tools for Teachers. It'll be available August 4th for the 23-24 Smarter Balanced interims. Another way is through the interim assessment viewing system, and that's designed for teachers to see the interim items. You can pick the whole interim and look through all of the items in the test. Okay, we had a question about what is included in CERS. So someone started with, is the initial ELPAC available in CERS?
I think I took that one, Nikki. So CERS includes interim assessment results as well as summative assessment results. So that would not include initial ELPAC results. So CERS does not include and will not include initial ELPAC.
Thank you. And then there was conversation when we were talking about the target reports about groups of 30 or more. So if I'm a teacher and I have 25 students assigned to me, will I be able to see any data for those 25 students because I'm below that 30 threshold?
Yeah, that's a great question. You will not be able to see the target reports. You have to have 30 or more students to be able to see those target reports. Now, what we've seen in some schools and some organizations is, most teachers don't have access to 30. So what the test site coordinator will do is, usually cumulatively, you'll have 50 to 60 students, maybe 70 per grade level. And grade levels meet as PLCs anyways for those common formative assessments. And so by looking at it through the lens of that test site coordinators, whether they're logging in, they're projecting it up, and everybody's going over looking at those target reports together, because it is a collaboration, they do exceed the 30 students to be able to get those target reports.
So the 30 is just the target reports. If I have 25 kids, I can still see all of their data except the target reports.
Correct. Target reports is the only thing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then a couple of questions about the claim level data for ELA and math and why we don't have access to that.
Yeah, so great question. Claim level data will live in the test results for California Assessment's website. That's where we're going to be able to see those results for, once again, groups of 30 or more students. So once the 22-23 CAASPP or Smarter Balance data has been made public, we'll be able to see claim level data on that particular website. Once again, test results for California Assessment's website. Claim level data does not live in CERS.
Thank you. And then someone asked, can you remind me what you mean by writing data in CERS? And Erin, I believe you answered, or no, Alicia answered that one. So someone wants to take that.
Yeah, I can take that. So in a summative ELA assessment, in that drop-down menu, you're able to see the writing trait scores. And so then it lets you know how your class did on average. and for each of the categories. So looking at the evidence and elaboration, organization purpose, and then conventions. And then it lets you know, depending upon the genre, how they did.
My name is Teresa Blanchard, and I'm excited to guide you through the next section of our CERS training that will cover interim assessment data in CERS. Here, CERS allows you to view student responses and distractors, as well as view specific items for interim assessments. The California assessment system is comprehensive, and it includes summative assessments, interim assessments, and tools for teachers, which is the resource to support the formative assessment process. Tools for teachers is where the instructional resources are located and the formative assessment component of the Smarter Balance system. For now, let's focus in on the interim assessment piece. The items on the interim assessments come from the same pool as the items used for the summative assessment and were developed in the same manner. That means the students are responding to the same types of items that they will see on the summative assessment. The interim assessments are administered online using the same test delivery system as the summative assessments. That means that anyone who has the ability to administer a summative assessment has the ability to start an interim assessment, since the credentials needed are the same. There's also an interim administrator-only role that is available for staff who need to administer interim assessments but not summative assessments. The interim assessments are not computer adaptive. This means that all students will be asked to answer the same set of test questions. Non-adaptive assessments allows teachers to see item-specific results for planning next steps for instruction. In CERS, links to ELA and math instructional resources that focus on the formative assessment process are available. In your resource guide, we have added 2 handouts that are linked. You do not need to access them now, but you can refer back to them later. They are the interim assessments at a glance flyer, which lists all of the 23-24 interim assessments by subject and grade, as well as the interim assessment by grade flyer, which lists each interim per grade level and shows how many hand-scored items are in each interim assessment. Now let's go over the purpose and use of interim assessments before we jump into the data that's available. The interim assessments can inform and support teaching and learning in multiple ways. Their intended purpose is to evaluate student knowledge and skills during the year. Interim assessments can be used flexibly for their intended purpose as both assessments for learning and of learning. Now, what do we mean by that? Interim assessments can be administered in a standardized manner as a formal individual assessment, or they can also be administered in a non-standardized manner, such as with a whole class or in small groups. This is important to understand that the interim assessments can be used flexibly, and they give teachers options to use them as assessments, again, for learning or of learning. When teachers administer interim assessments, they are asked whether they are being administered in a standardized or non-standardized manner. Now, CERS will note the administration of the standardized and non-standardized administration, but the results are displayed the same, and I'll point that out during our demo. It is the teacher that can consider the manner of administration when viewing results. Now, use of the interim assessments can also improve student familiarity with different types of test items, with the interface and the accessibility resources. Becoming familiar with the interims can lead to powerful professional learning for educators. The resources available to support the interim assessments allow teachers to become more familiar with the content being assessed, the ways in which students are assessed, and the rubrics or scoring criteria that are used to judge the responses. As you review this section, be thinking about your own classrooms, your schools and districts, and where the interims might fit in. Now let's talk briefly about the 3 different kinds of Smarter Balanced interim assessments. On the very left, we have the Interim Comprehensive Assessments, or ICAs, that test the same content and report scores on the same scale as the summative assessments. They take about the same amount of time to administer as the summative assessments. Well, we should say that they used to take the same amount of time to administer as the summative assessments. With the new Smarter Balanced adjusted form that happened in spring 2021, the ICAs will actually take longer than the summative to administer as they align with the full form blueprints of the summative assessments. Also note that the adjusted summative blueprint is not a permanent change at this time, but will be used this year. The ICAs are administered on the computer, but are not computer adaptive. That is, they include a fixed set of items and every student gets the same items. They can be administered up to 3 times a year. Each ICA includes 1 or more items that require hand scoring. Now, these are shown as a Rubik's Cube with all the blocks shaded in to represent the same number of targets as the summative assessment. In the middle, we have the interim assessment blocks, or IABs, that focus on smaller sets of related concepts and provide more detailed information for instructional purposes. They generally have from 6 to 18 items and can be administered within 1 class period. They could be administered an unlimited number of times, but it is important to note that there is currently only 1 form for each IAB, so students would experience the same items if the assessment is given more than 1 time. Now, this is shown as a Rubik's Cube with 8 blocks shaded to represent a small number of targets assessed. And on the far right, we have our focused IABs, which assess even smaller chunks of content, generally 1 to 3 assessment targets. They generally have 10 to 15 items focused on very specific concepts. These are shown as a Rubik's Cube with 2 blocks shaded to represent the fewest number of targets assessed. All Smarter Balanced interim assessments contain high-quality test items that are developed in the same way as those used for the summative assessments. These are questions that can be machine scored by the Smarter Balanced system. However, some questions such as constructed response items and performance tasks, they do still need to be hand scored by teachers locally. Performance tasks are one type of item in both the interim and summative assessments. Now, lucky for us, that's what we're here to talk about today. Now, we're very excited to announce that the CAASPP interim assessments are in development and will start being released this fall. We expect LEAs to be able to start administering the CAASPP IAs and accessing a variety of performance information in CERS by mid-October, excuse me. More detailed information like student responses is expected to be available beginning in late January. While the CAASPP interim assessments are not yet available, we want to be sure to share this information with you all now so you know what is to come. Since these have not yet launched, all demonstrations will be done with ELA and math interim assessments. There will be 9 CAASPP interim assessments available in year 1. That's grades 3, 4, and 5, CAASPP IA1, Earth and Space, Life, and Physical Sciences, each grade having one of those interim assessments. Middle school has an Earth and Space Sciences IA, middle school CAASPP IA1 for Life Sciences, and middle school CAASPP IA1 for Physical Sciences. And then high school also has CAASPP IA1 Earth and Space Sciences, CAASPP IA1 Life Sciences, and CAASPP IA1 Physical Sciences. Each interim will include 1 performance task with a constructed response that will require hand scoring. Just like the Smarter Balanced IABs, the CAASPP interims can be administered in a standardized or a non-standardized manner. We also have our ELPAC interim assessments, and those are in development as well and will be released on the same timeline as the CAASPP. While the ELPAC interim assessments are not yet available, we want to share again this information with you all now so you know what to look forward to. There will be 28 forms available for the ELPAC interim assessments. The ELPAC interim assessments will be available for each of the grade levels and grade spans currently assessed by the summative ELPAC. We have kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade span 3 through 5, grade span 6 through 8, grade span 9 and 10, and grade span 11 and 12. These interim assessments will align with the 2012 California English Language Development Standards. Each grade or grade span will contain 4 individual domain tests or domain-based tests: listening 1, speaking 1, reading 1, and writing 1. Speaking and writing are locally hand scored by educators. Reading and listening are going to be computer scored. The ELPAC interim assessments will be administered online to students as a linear test, except for kindergarten through grade 2 writing domain, which, like the summative ELPAC, will be administered on paper. Each interim will include about half of the items on the summative ELPAC, with all summative task types covered between interim 1 and interim 2. Just like the Smarter Balanced IABs, the interim ELPACs or the ELPAC interims can be administered in any order and administered in a non-standardized manner as well as a standardized manner. For all Smarter Balanced interim assessments, we will see information similar to that of the summatives, including the grade level assessed, the average score for the group, the number of students in the results, student score distribution by level, individual student results as well. And for the interim assessment, we will also see information we can't get with summative results, including our item viewer, the item information, which includes standards, claim, depth of knowledge, key or distractor analysis, interim assessment item view, the rubric and exemplar information if available, and links to instructional resources. This data can be used to guide instruction. For example, teachers can use this data to find student misconceptions about the academic content that was assessed. Interim assessment results for fully machine scored items should show in CERS within 20 minutes. For any interim assessment that requires hand scoring, results will only show in CERS after all local hand scoring is completed. For all CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments, there will be a rollout of features to accompany the interim assessments. All of these dates are coming soon, so please take note. Starting in mid-September 2023, educators will have preview access to interim assessments. This includes access to all of the interim assessment forms via the interim assessment viewing system, access to answer keys, item metadata, and hand scoring materials in TOMS. In mid-October 2023, educators will be able to administer interim assessments via the test delivery system and access a variety of results in CERS. This means the test administrator interface, test delivery system, data entry interface, and teacher hand scoring system will all be available for the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. In CERS, we will have access to overall scale scores, performance levels, custom aggregate reports, and key and distractor analysis. In January 2024, we will see additional CERS features, including items and student responses. And in July 2024, CERS will have ISRs for CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. As for when simulated data will be added to the CERS sandbox for the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments, that is currently to be determined, or TBD. More information will be coming from the CDE on this soon. All right, we are going to dive into our third demonstration or a live demo of this training. I am going to walk you through the specifics of Smarter Balanced interim assessment data. And after this demo, we will have some time to do an exploration of CERS on your own before we move into the next session. And I'm going to dive into our CAASPP.org website, where you'll see the CERS link on that second row. We have, again, the sandbox training tool to use to do these live demos. And because you are teachers, we're going to actually use a role with teacher from middle school, sample middle school. And then we're going to enter the sandbox as that sample middle school teacher. Once it loads, we will be able to enter our individual student IDs, but really, if I have groups assigned, I'm going to actually go in as a grade 7 middle school teacher who administered an IAB for math. So I'm going to click on that plus sign, and we're going to take a look at our IAB on expressions and equations for grade 7. If anything is defaulted, or if it is already showing and you don't want to view it, you can deselect it or click on those X's to minimize that. So as we select our IABs, we can then select individual sessions that we administered on this. So if I am a grade 7 teacher and I have several classes maybe that took this assessment on the same day, I can actually select as many of these as I would like. Maybe I want to look at all of them with all of my classes combined, and that shows that I had 113 students that took this assessment. I can see the student score distribution by below standard, near standard, and above standard, and the percentages, or I can toggle, just as Joe and Erin has showed us earlier. We can look at the number of students in each of those score distributions. So I'm going to look at the percent of students. I have 20% above standard, 44% near standard, and 36% below standard. Now the magic happens when we click on that show results drop down, and sometimes it doesn't always pop up automatically. So make sure you click on that show results tab, and you will get to select your results by view. Now we're going to start by looking at results by student, which is the default of the viewing for our IABs. I can look at all of my individual students. Right now, the default is last name alphabetical, but if I wanted to look at individual sessions, or if I wanted to perhaps, as Joe had showed us, go ahead and reorganize the scale score or sort it by the lowest. And if I click again, the highest scale scores earned by my students, I can take a look at individual students and download those IABs, those results. And I'm going to actually use Barbara here as an example. So I can take a look at an individual score report. It will go into your My Reports. Once it loads, it will actually come up. I'm going to take a look at my student Brandon Bryant. We can see he took this IAB, and once those score reports load, then we can actually take a look at any of the IABs that he took, including this additional performance task. So I can see he scored near standard, and I can look at individual students once I download those reports. So going back to our results as a whole class, again, I'm going to select my grade 7 math IAB that I administered. And I can, again, select as many of the sessions that I administered, maybe in multiple sections or times. And then I'm going to actually look at my results by item, because I want to figure out which questions I might want to review either in a non-standardized manner or with reteaching. And we're going to look, maybe I'm going to sort this by item difficulty and get my difficult questions, or I can sort by how many students got full credit, which is 1, or full credit by percentage. So this looks like, 73% of my class scored or got full credit for question number 1, probably one of the easier questions. I'm going to click on it again and see that, only 47% answered question 12. So I might want to look at question 12 and see, why is that question so difficult for my students? So I can actually click on the drop-down arrow, as you saw me click on that one right there. And I can, again, take a look at individual student responses for this individual question or item. And I can look at the item viewer, which gives us a lot of information, because you can see the question that the student will see in the test delivery system, as well as kind of how they're asked to input or answer that question, input their answer or answer the question. So this one, they're actually using a manual calculator to enter their score. They're not really typing that information in, which could be difficult if my students haven't practiced that throughout the year. I can also see if there's a rubric or the answer key available. In this case, they're just putting in that answer. And then I can also click on that 4th tab and get some item information. If I wanted to deselect that and look at another question, let's look at question 18 together. I can, again, look at the item viewer. This one shows a figure with different rectangles, and they're entering the area again with that kind of calculator input response, and I can get more information by item that way. So I really like this feature to be able to review results by items. Again, I can use the filters to drill down into the questions that might be most difficult for my students or that were very difficult. And then again, use those to provide some instruction or maybe some small group instruction. The next way we can break down our IAB results is by key distractor analysis. So you saw that is the third option on that select a results view dropdown. So if I look at key distractor analysis for this IAB, if I'm a grade 7 mathematics teacher, this is a really great way to see at a glance for some of these questions, especially that have more than one answer. Anything that is highlighted green gives us the correct answer. So I really like this because I can see, you know, question 14, I'm going to drop down and take a look at that item viewer. It has the correct answer is A, C, and E. It gives the students a word problem, and it asks them to select all combinations of values for the electrician's work hours and total work fee, which requires multiple checkboxes. Now, I can see that most of my students got the last choice, which is 9.5 hours. And some of the students got that middle choice and not very many got that first choice. So I might take a look at that and see, you know, are there maybe some examples that we can go over that might be similar so they don't get tricked by some of those distractors or, you know, just making sure that they know they need to select more than one answer for those types of questions. Now, the other favorite feature here when we are breaking down and looking at interim assessments is the shortcut button to our Tools for Teachers website, which is the instructional resources button. It's the blue button right above, you know, and you'll see it even if I'm viewing results by student. The instructional resources button is a direct Tools for Teachers Connections playlist link that will get you to, if you're logged in, let's log in here. I'll kind of show you what to do if that ever happens to you and you're not logged in with your TOMS account. And actually I do have this pulled up here. Let's take a look and see if it's still up. So, you know what, I am just going to log in one more time just to give you a chance to see what this looks like. I'm going to select my location and we're going to log in here again. It does time you out if you are logged in for too long and you are inactive. So let me get in here one more time. I appreciate your patience. So we're logging back in where we left off. I'm going to go back and try that shortcut again, because if you are logged into TOMS, it should take you directly to, just like this, the Interim Connections playlist for the information that is associated with this IAB. So again, I was a grade 7 mathematics teacher in this scenario. We are looking at expressions and equations. I can look over here in the right-hand column and see what targets and claim one that this interim assessment assessed. I can actually view interim assessment items by clicking right at the top. I can take a look at the performance progressions, which again is a description of what students know and can do if they again are scoring in that below, near, and above student performance breakdown. There are links to additional lessons that can be used to target and teach some of these skills, some suggestions for intervention, so many things. Academic vocabulary is my favorite part of this. And then we can look at sample items in the Content Explorer by selecting our grade again, and our subject, if we're math, concepts and procedures, the targets that were assessed. And some of that can, you know, be pulled up automatically. And you can look at individual and additional items that are assessed within that Content Explorer. If you want it to be, you know, kind of available, that will be available in this Tools for Teachers view for you to drill down and find some additional questions that you might want to use with your students. So all of that information is available and more. So we want to give you a chance to dive into the Sandbox account and play with it a little bit on your own. You will be able to do one or all of the following tasks, depending on how ambitious you are or how much you can click in that amount of time. You can view interim results by item, by key distractor analysis. You can explore the Tools for Teachers Interim Assessment Connections playlist for an IAB. And just a couple reminders that certain roles will not have access to certain features, but it is a sandbox, which means the data will look different when you log into your live or actual CERS environment with your own TOMS accounts. And most importantly, as we've said before, you can't break anything, just have fun and click away. We will see you back at 2:50. All right, I know time flies when you're exploring CERS, so I hope you were able to explore a little bit of what we were able to explore during the live demo and look at some of our interim results by item, by student, or by key or distractor. So we have just a reflection that we wanted to build in. Now we have a few minutes just to think about these questions. How might I use each of the following result views for analyzing interim assessment results, again, by student, by item, or by key distractor analysis? Now, take a moment to think how you or teachers at your site can use this information with students.
So we have someone asking about students' previous year's assessments. So once my district, is the class lists are finalized and they've done all the rostering and I have students in CERS, can I see not only their most recent assessment, but like historical data in CERS?
Yeah, I think I answered that one. Yes, you'll be able to see historical data, not just summative assessments, but any interim assessments that were administered in other organizations as well, once they're rostered to you.
And then a couple of questions about seeing interim results and hand scoring. So if I administer an interim, like the ICA or one of the IABs that has a hand scoring requirement, but I don't do the hand scoring, can I still see the results in CERS?
Yeah, that was a great question. You won't be able to see results in CERS until all hand scoring items have been scored.
And I'm also going to put in a plug for the interim by grade documents. They list all of the interims, obviously by grade, but also how many items require hand scoring in each interim, so you can see which ones do and which ones do not require hand scoring.
We're going to switch over to CERS resources, which will be the last topic before we wrap up today. Let's start with some CERS resources. So links to all of these items are going to be in your resource guide. We've already mentioned the CERS user guide, but we also want to make sure to call your attention to it one more time. It's really, really useful. We also covered the CERS Sandbox, which is also an excellent tool. We got to play with it a little bit today. You'll see the CERS Sandbox flyer in your note-taking guide as well. And then there's also a few quick reference guides, which will walk you through step-by-steps on various CERS functions, such as how to view results by school, how to view individual student results, and then how to view writing trait scores. There are also some great videos available to support use of CERS at all levels. The links to both of these videos are in your resource guide. They are the Understanding the California Educator Reporting System video and the Creating Groups in the California Educator Reporting System video. We also want to mention the CERS resources webpage, which includes lots of information and additional resources, such as a link to the Student Information System, the CERS integration page, and the videos we mentioned previously. The link for frequently asked questions about target reports can be found in the resource guide for this session. Great, great, great resource right there. One last reminder. As you go back to your sites and as you start to look at your own data in CERS, if you don't see any data in CERS, that's because no students have been rostered to you yet or assigned to you in CERS. Remember, just like Nikki said, the system just came back up yesterday morning, I believe at 8 o'clock. So everybody's got to get put back into the system. Remember, teacher level users can only see the data in CERS for students who have been rostered to them. If you want to use CERS but don't see student groups assigned to you, please reach out to your site administrator to talk about having students rostered to you in the system. Once again, we want to recommend the CERS video about rostering. This is a great resource to share with your site administrator if they're not quite sure the process for rostering students in CERS. And one last note, if your student group lists needs to be changed, example, you got new students that are added to your class, students' names need to be corrected, or new rosters need to be loaded into the system. That's an ongoing thing throughout the year. That's just one of those things that continues to need to be updated. Remember, that can only be done by the person in the district who manages CERS access, usually the CAASPP coordinator or other administrators. So where have we been? At the beginning of our time together, we set the following success criteria. And here we are at the end of the training. And now we can explain the purpose of CERS, describe the types of assessment data and CERS features available to TAs and TEs, those are test administrators and test examiners, and also access instructional resources to support classroom teaching and learning. And with that, we've come to the official end of our training. We appreciated the questions you've asked, and we hope that you found the session and the opportunity to explore the system informative and helpful. We also hope that you feel more confident to begin CERS, using CERS at your site. Please feel free to reach out if you do have any questions. And on behalf of the California Department of Education, the Sacramento County Office of Education, and your training team here today, we thank you for spending your time with us today, and we hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you for being here, everybody.